Okay, by my clock, it's time to start. So let's go ahead and get going. Tim's just in the middle of joining. We have agreed ahead of time that he's going to watch the jabber and I'll do the slides. So we'll go ahead and start doing that. This is LAMPS, and this is the note well. This is only the second meeting of this IETF, so it might be your first. So basically, please make sure that you're aware of these things about expected behavior and don't contribute unless you're willing to comply with them. We have two sessions this week, 1 hour each. That was necessary to reduce the number of conflicts in putting the agenda together. So today we're going to talk about CMP, the 3 CMP related documents, and then we'll talk about the document where some folks want to assign an additional extended key usage for document signing. And then on Thursday, we'll talk about EST CSR attributes for alternate names and the various SMIME related documents. The reason that the item number 2 on this list was pushed is because this slot is conflicting with Anima, and Anima is the one that has raised this topic for discussion. Are there any agenda bashes? Okay, seeing no hands, then we're going to proceed with this. So, Henrik, I think you are going to be the presenter for the next topic. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks,
okay.
Rob.
Let me...
Are you sharing or should I share?
I'll share, that way they're going to come straight from the data tracker.
Okay.
That way we know everyone's in sync with the same. And so just say next slide when you need me to, and I will turn off my camera and audio.
Thanks, Russ. So this presentation is on the status of the 3 CMP-related documents. Next slide, please. The first document, CMP updates, this is a status on what was changed and updated since last IETF meeting. So it's mainly these points listed here. So we changed for the key usage OIDs to reference to RFC 6402 to make things easier. We also introduced 2 new OIDs on root CA third update and on third profile. These will be used in later support messages to indicate for which root CA the update is requested and which certificate profile is to be referenced. So this can be used in support messages to get a template for such a certificate request, as well as for a certificate request itself to indicate which profile should be used to issue the certificate. Another point that was brought up during reviews, there are some algorithms out there that do not strictly indicate a hash algorithm combined with a signature algorithm, and therefore there was a deficiency in the third status type used for confirmation messages in CMP, which indirectly indicated the hash algorithm to use for the third hash via the signature algorithm of that certificate. And we introduced the hash alg field, the optional field, to indicate directly a hash algorithm for those signature algorithms who do not have this as part of the signature algorithm OID. Then, as already said, we updated the support messages, so the OIDs for these support messages, to make use of the indications explained before. We also updated the local key ID attribute after discussion and feedback from Russ. And we changed in the ASIN1 syntax for the certification request for PKCS10 from the original PKCS10 RFC to that syntax that is listed in RFC 6402. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? So there are some updates that popped up after submitting the updated RFCs for this meeting. So we will introduce or will update the RFC, the draft, respectively. And I will also do some updates to the ASIN1 modules, addressing feedback from Russ. Then a final internal review is ongoing on the 3 documents, so maybe some feedbacks pop up there and will need to be addressed in an update as well. But yeah, any further feedback, of course, is always more than welcome. And we plan to come to a stable version to proceed to working group last call before next IETF meeting. Any feedback to CMP updates? Okay, next slide, please. So with CMP algorithms, we did some changes, more minor changes, addressing mainly what was going on in and after last IETF meeting. I also want to welcome John Gray as one of the co-authors. He did a very welcome review of the document and contributed quite some parts. So we will add him to the list of authors. We addressed this topic with hash algorithm in combination with EDDSA, as EDDSA not directly indicates a hash algorithm in the algorithm identifier, even though it has a preferred hash algorithm to be used in other RFCs. We did some clarification on AES GMAC. We updated section 7 on the algorithm use profiles. So we reduced the section on, or deleted the section on general guidance, and also deleted, after discussion in last IETF meeting, the list of mandatory algorithms to support in section 7.2, which is a algorithm use profile for the lightweight CMP profile, and we just indicate examples there. Because finally the algorithms to be supported heavily depend on the use cases, and therefore we do not want to indicate any mandatory to support algorithms. We also extended some parts in the security consideration, and yeah, next slide please. The next steps is, I have to fix some formatting nits that came in while making use of an XML a tool that removed all spaces before and after references, so we'll fix that. And finally, maybe, but I don't guess that will happen, maybe some comments come from the internal review, but otherwise the document is quite stable and complete, and the authors also would like to proceed to working group last call after next update. Any feedbacks
Question,
on the change?
Hendrik?
Yes.
Is there any reason that these two documents need to be lockstep, or could we do one then the other based on on when you guys think they're ready?
Are there any interdependencies? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I would say CMP algorithms could be the first one, as CMP updates had some interdependencies with the light-white profile.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. So, next slide, please. So the light-white profile, there we performed a larger number of changes. If someone had a look at the diff, he will mention that a lot of changes to wording and language issues and clarifications and so on took place to make it easier to read. We also aligned with the updates to CMP algorithms and CMP updates. We also changed some references for CRMF update after assigning an RFC number. In section 2, we did one change after feedback we got that we moved the use case on changing a protection of a message to adding a protection, because this is easier to handle when forwarding messages. So we kind of changed priority for recommended and optional usage of these use cases on the RA side. But probably this is not something really major, but I just wanted to point on this change. In section 3, which provides the header for the CMP messages, so the generic header, we also made references to the #elk field that is used later on. And we added 3 new subsections which put together the prerequisites for PKI management operation, some generic message validations that will need to be applied to each message when receiving one. And we harmonized the error reporting. So we will have now one generic error reporting section that nicely fits right after this validation section to make it easier and more straightforward also for implementers. Next slide, please. In section 4, we introduced a state machine from the viewpoint of the end entity to give a good overview on how the end entity will need to handle the different messages. And we, of course, removed the error handling section, and because it's now integrated in section 3.6, like I mentioned before. In section 5, we did some restructuring. We introduced a section 5.1, which indicates how a PKI management entity responds on requests. In section 5.2, that was there already, but we reworked it. This is how a PKI management entity forwards a message to a further upstream PKI management entity. And in this section, we also reworked a section on nested messages a little bit. And then we introduced section 5.3, which was there partly, and this is how a PKI management entity acts on behalf of some other entity. And then, of course, we also removed the former error handling section and referenced section 3.6. In section 6, we combined or removed the HTTPS section and integrated this in the HTTP section, as discussed last IETF meeting. And we added a list of co-op endpoints to the co-op section, as the co-op CMP over co-op draft in the ACE working group is improving and will move forward to working, or is already in working group last call. And so, yeah, we thought that it's reasonable now to also add a list of endpoint there. In section 8, we added some security considerations, especially on shared secret information, but on handling shared secret information, but we will most likely add some further sections during a next review. In Appendix A, there is this example for the certificate request template structure, and this was adapted and aligned with the changes we did to this syntax. Next slide, please. During the internal review, one point was brought to our attention, and this is currently in CMP there is one mechanism for kind of delayed enrollment, which only addressing certificate request messages like IR, CR, KUR, and P10 CR, but which is not capable of delayed delivery or asynchronous delivery of other messages like confirmation messages, revocation requests, or general messages. And we discussed internally how could we cope with this deficiency, because in some use cases we would like to bridge an offline an offline communication using nested messages like batches, and for this we need some mechanism like polling also for these other messages, especially support messages. And therefore we thought about changing this delayed delivery to a mechanism where we first send the initial request and answer on this request message with error messages with a status waiting, and in a wait time in the error code field. This is also an integer field, so it nicely fits with a poll request messages. And then the end entity could resend the initial request after this wait time elapsed and just resend the original message, and then get the response to the message indicated in the first time. This comes with some hurdles with regard to nonce handling in CMP messages, but as long as we do only have a request response mechanism, then the nonce handling does not bring much value. Therefore, this is an idea we would like to, to explain maybe in some more concrete text in this version, and we see that it will simplify and more generalize this delayed delivery mechanism. This would not require any changes to the AS1 syntax, and would nicely fit from our perspective, but it would need some more time to put this in concrete text in the draft. Is there any comment or feedback already on this idea?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was quite a brief description, and when we come up with a more expressive text, then the idea comes across better, I guess. And then I would love to get feedback on this. Next slide, please. So the text is mainly complete. We would like to add some section or a paragraph on how to apply this profile to Brusky and SZTP, just for giving implementers an idea how to do that. We would like to change this delayed enrollment to a kind of delayed delivery of all kinds of messages, as explained in the previous slide. And then we can discuss whether this is a good idea or not. We will probably add some paragraphs to the security considerations, and waiting for some final feedbacks from the internal review. But hopefully we will also manage to get this draft ready for working group last call in advance to the next IETF meeting. Any questions on the status of these 3 documents?
So the way I'm seeing this stack up for working group last call is that algorithms will go first, then updates, then lightweight.
Yeah,
does that
definitely
make sense? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands. I don't see anything in the chat, so I think that means people are happy with the direction you're taking.
Okay.
We'll really find out at last call.
Yeah, thanks. And
right. Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm fine, thanks. That was all from my side.
Okay. All right. All right. Next up is Sean Turner.
All right, is this thing on?
See a big gray beard.
All right, good. Hey, so thanks for having me. This is an idea that Ita-san, Tomofumi, and myself have been working on. It's basically a general purpose EKU for document signing. I won't bury the lead here. It's a short document, and we'd like the working group to adopt it. So next, we'll go into the motivations. So some background here. So there's extended key usage extension, which is defined at 5280, which allows the extension to indicate one or more purposes for which the certified public key can be used. And you'll see on the right, there's a whole bunch of them. They've been defined over time in various RFCs, and they're used all over the place. They were probably used a little bit more at the beginning than they were later, but they are out there. And so the one thing is there's general purpose ones for like signing of emails and other things, but there's not one specifically for signing documents per se. Next. So, since it's one or more purpose, we could pick an existing OID that's already defined, or an existing EKU that's already defined. So, we could do email protection or code signing or one other thing, but we think there's too many issues with unexpected behaviors or adverse impacts that could happen if we were to like basically add an additional usage. We think that would be probably bad. We also think that there's a possibility that there are already some vendor-defined EKUs for document signing. For example, Adobe and Microsoft and others that have document signing products. And there's really no issue with using vendor-defined OIDs, but they're not really, it'd be weird to kind of adopt them someplace else. So the idea is that we kind of like to define a generic purpose one. Next. So what's our choices, right? Well, we could, let OIDs be defined, each one individually defined by whoever, nation, state, forum, consortia, software vendors, individuals, etc. Those might work well, but it's a lot of effort to get them defined and used and implemented and understood elsewhere. So really kind of the idea is that we'd like to have kind of a generic one place defined, and that would be in the IETF. And so our proposals define a general purpose EKU for document signing. So the intent is that they would be used for signing contents that are consumed by humans. Content is something that's printable or displayable rather than processed by a machine. The OID would be defined under the IANA ARC that's IDKP. And so we can keep using the existing OIDs without doing any kind of cross-contamination. And as the CAs can include multiple EKUs, they can kind of knock themselves out to include one or not. And I believe that's it. And I should note that I know that Ita-san and Tomofumi are on here. Thanks for staying up late. And so if there's any questions, you can please ask them now, and one of the three of us can try to answer them.
Go ahead, Elliot.
Good afternoon, Sean and Russ. Good afternoon to others, and good evening to those of us in Europe. Good morning to Ida-san and all. Boy, that was long. The question I just have is a simple one after all of that, which is, have you been talking to any of the CAs and had any reaction from them in terms of willingness to implement?
I will turn this over to Tomofumi and Ita-san, but I believe they have. There was actually a blog post by the CA Browser Forum, I guess, that seemed to be at least supportive. So they're there, and I know that Tomofumi and Ita-san both actually work for CAs, and there have been requests for such a thing that they could then use.
So one question I have is whether
Ita-san, are you? Did you want to say
go ahead?
anything?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I and my CA and Tomofumi's CA both are interested in that EKU. Yeah. And yeah.
Like,
Go ahead, Tomofumi.
Otherwise, we end up in a situation where we've just done something for what purpose? Yeah.
Tomofumi,
So
we saw your hand a second ago. Do you want to?
There he is.
Please, please speak.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. So, Ito-san and I, we had a similar case where the customer wants to, well, they issue certificates for document signing, but they don't necessarily want to use ISMIME or code signing or any other existing EKUs for document signing, because they don't want to be governed by this particular consortium or trust program.
So is that a statement that the CA you work for would use this if it was assigned?
The answer to that question is yes, pretty sure it would.
Okay. All
There we
right.
go.
So personally, I think this is a good idea to assign this. I would love to hear support for that idea or reasons why you think it's a bad idea.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't have even suggested that this be adopted if they didn't have multiple CAs that were willing to use it, because I feel Elliot's point that we can have a great idea to try to define it, but if it's never going to get used, we're all just wasting our time.
Go ahead, Elliot.
I'll be happy to support and review it. Take my reviews with a grain of salt because I'm a novice when it comes to some of the EKU stuff.
Joe?
Yeah, I'd be happy to support if people are going to implement it. I'd review.
Thank you. Rich?
Your systems. Yeah, I support this, especially if the CAs have already bought into it. Cool. I did have one question though, since I missed part of the first thing. Ryan Sleevey, what was his feedback?
So he posted a lot on the mail list, some of which was a discussion of the general differences between key usage and extended key usage, and not really commenting on this one. Okay. So, but he has like 3 or 4 messages in the thread about this that people should review. I found his meandering among those hard to come down to support, not support.
Okay, that was why I asked the question also. So.
Right. Good.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I support this. I think it's a good thing.
All right, so I'm seeing a few people at Jabber being supportive as well. I'm not seeing anybody going against. So what I would propose is the next step is we do a call for adoption. And I'll start that sometime this week, whenever I have a break. Does that work for people? Okay. All right. Thank you, Sean. Since we have a few minutes here, I wanted to share a document that I just posted as an update to RFC 7299. It turns out that when I did the work to gather together all of the OIDs that were assigned by the PKIX working group and turned them into IANA registries, I missed 2 OIDs. So this document simply points out that those 2 OIDs, which were from RFC 4212, did not get included, includes them, and asks that IANA create a registry. It is literally, the IANA considerations is the whole document except for explaining that they should have been included in RFC 7299. So Tim is going to make all the consensus calls on that document, but it was posted today. All right. Tim, do you want to share anything about that? Okay, Rich, go ahead. Rich, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I read it during the break. We should adopt it and move it right to last call. Do it in one step. Just to show, to make up for 52.
Just to show it can be done.
If there are no objections, Rich, that we're gonna try that.
Yeah, just 5280 was an aberration, not the way it usually works.
All right. All right, then we've surprisingly bashed today's agenda really quickly. And so we're going to wrap up a few minutes early, and we'll be able to talk again on Thursday when we talk about the SMIME and EST-related parts of the agenda. Enjoy the IETF, and I'm not seeing any hands for any last-minute topics. So, all right, have a great week.